studied architecture. I started kind of late, and then got an undergraduate degree, got a graduate degree at UT Arlington. And then I went to work for a large firm in Dallas called HKS, and they've had up to like 1,400 employees, and then, with the economy, it goes up and down. But, it's a big multinational firm at this point with offices in London and Mumbai, China. But when we worked there, it was just in the US, and then they opened an office in London. So we had wanted to move to London. So we kept trying to get them to move us to London. We had a small child at that point who was just getting ready for kindergarten, and they just couldn't imagine two working parents with a child wanting to go to London. So we quit and moved to New York. And we've been here since 2006. My partner, my husband, worked for larger firm here, and then I worked for a smaller firm for about a year. Then I've been doing residential primarily since then. So since about 2010, I've been doing residential projects, so like apartments, and working with the Department of Buildings and Landmarks, and then even into the interiors end of it, with materials and finishes and paint colors and things. So I have like a large firm experience working in education, hospitals and schools, and then I have all the way down to like bathroom, like a bathroom renovation, or a kitchen that's the size of a postage stamp. So that's kind of the experience that I have.
First, I would like to know, what is it that you do right now? Are you with a company, or do you have your own firm in New York, or?
So I right now am working with my husband, and we are primarily working on exterior envelope, like restoration. So the buildings in New York, many of them are very old, over 100 years, and they are past their usable life, what they were intended to last. So they have to be repaired regularly now, and it's a law that they have to inspect them. So we've been working on that together about a little over a year. And then for the 3 years before that, I worked for a small firm with about 10 people, and I did primarily residential. So I was, designing people's apartments and that kind of more human scale, you could say.
That sounds great, actually. I think that designing a house or home is really, really interesting, because you're designing a space where a lot of people are going to live, and they're going to have so many memories. And I think that
exactly.
Beautiful.
Exactly. It is beautiful. It's really a pleasure. It's also hard because people don't actually know what they want. So they show you photos, and you take what they show you and you say, okay, let's go. But they don't know how to see it themselves. So it's not until it's finished that they can actually say oh, how did that happen? It's exactly what I wanted, and you're like, well, that's what we do.
I would like to know, how did you get into architecture? What inspired you, or what was your calling, that you said, oh, this is what I want?
So when I finished high school, I studied first interior design, and then I left college for about 3 semesters. So I studied for 3 semesters, and I left college for another 3 semesters, a year and a half. And then I started back at the University of Pittsburgh, where they had a program which was a pre-architecture program, which is similar to what you're doing. So it wasn't a professional degree. It was more an art, and design-based program. And they had a history class. And in the architecture history class, they showed a picture of the Farnsworth House, which is a house by Mies van der Rohe. And the guy said, this is a house. And I said, like, in my mind, I'm like, whoa, if that's a house, then I'm an architect. Like, I see, like, if that's a house, then I'm an architect. And so that's when I transferred to UT Arlington, because my family, like, I was born in Houston and I grew up in Pennsylvania, but I had family in Texas, and so that's it was a really, really good financial, like, I don't know how it is now, but it used to be like it was really, really inexpensive to go to college, once you got in-state tuition. So I could just pay for it, and it wasn't really like hard. So that was it. And then the program at UT Arlington was very design based, very modernist, and so it all kind of fit together with that, like, glass house ethos.
Like, how would you describe your style?
Well, it's interesting because I believe that my style is still like I'm still a modernist, and that the work, though, when you work with clients, I would say I'm not as purist. So, I use more materials than all white, or that, like, very minimal look. But I know architects that do that it's very beautiful, but it's just kind of the clients that you align with. So I'm not like crown moldings or anything, but I'm definitely a little softer materials and things like that.
You right now are working in restoring buildings and all of these projects, and so my question is, like, how many projects can you be working at once, or, like, is it like very hectic, or do you give yourself like time to focus only on one?
So before, when I was working for a firm, I was working on, more than one project at a time, and it was hectic, and I didn't really like that. And I was working a lot of hours. But now I take, we have more control over the workflow. So I shift between 2 or 3 projects with a very nice pace. Yeah. It's a lot better.
Yeah, I say it's much less stress.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be an architect, and actually my older brother is studying to be an engineer. So
What kind of engineering?
I believe civil engineering.
Civil?
Like, yes.
Bridges.
Yes. So, a question that I have is, how important is, like, the work, like, not the work, but like the chemistry between an engineering and an architect?
Good. It's very important. If you want to, but I suspect that you're a very serious student and that you work very hard to a high level. And so that just carries through whatever you do. So then when you go into practice, whatever your practice is, where it is, or who you're working with, just always aspire to work with the people who are also trying to work at the highest level. And then it's not hard. Actually, it's very fun.
So in architecture, the industry, I believe that there's a lot of people that have that go with, like, the classics and follow the classics, and then there's people that just have these brilliant ideas and speak their minds and do totally different. So How important would you say is to have an innovative mind in the industry?
I think that it depends on the focus that interests you. So there are people who do very super innovative work, Diller and Scofidio, Morphosis, these firms that do really cutting edge work. And that's what interests them to think about all the time. And then some people choose to do super classical work, like that's what interests them and they like it. And so I think it's more important to actually be innovative in your mind about whatever you're interested in, and always try to be thinking about it at the highest level, working to the highest level to understand your discipline. And then it's enjoyable, and don't try to fit what somebody says architecture is. It's cool to think about all those things, and it was really fun in school. And then when I got out, I spoke to some firms and I interviewed with some firms, but the truth is that when I look back on it, and I didn't get those jobs, but I did get interviews. And when I look back on it, though, and I look at their work now, I think, oh, but I really like their work, at this point in the 1990s. But now when I look at the work they're doing now, I don't know that I would want to be working with that firm. So it's more important just to follow and listen to your own intuition. Like, I like this, I don't like that. And if somebody says, oh, well, that's important, and I think it's important, and blah, 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 but inside you kind of feel like, well, why? Like, listen to that.
Right. When you were in school and you were designing like these projects, would you say you had more freedom then, or would you have more freedom now to like express what you wanted to design?
In school, you have complete freedom. When you have a real client, you will never, ever have that level of freedom again.
Okay.
They want things, and there are requirements that they have that you have to fulfill. And in the end, there's always some amount of give that has to happen, because you're working with somebody else's needs and desires too. But when you're in school, you have a professor, but you pretty much can just do what you want, like, and that's what's so fun about it. Like, and don't think you have to fulfill, like, don't worry as much about it. Like, really follow your own creative muse while you're in school.
What would you say is like the greatest or best asset to have in order to go into the industry?
Curiosity.
So you,
Yep.
yeah, well, yes.
Be curious. Yep. Be curious. And I think additionally, be stubborn. Don't let anyone tell you can't do it. If somebody says that, just know, like, I have to find another way. I have to find another way. There's another way, because I want to do this. And if I want to do it, I know I want to do it. There must be a way for me to do it. I have to find that way. So if someone tries to close a door on you, start looking for the other doors, or the window, or the jackhammer.
Um, would you say that it's hard to get into this career, or is just like any other?
I don't think it's like any other. It's really highly dependent on the economy, and it has huge boom bust swings dependent on building. So in like 1987 to 1991 or 1992, 2002, there was a huge recession. 50% of architects lost their jobs. Then in 1996, it started to pick back up again. Then September 11th happened. 33% of architects lost their jobs. Then in 2008, when the economy melted down, like another time, 50% of architects are out of work, 40%, I think, at that time. And then in 2014, it started to pick up again. It got, hotter and hotter and hotter. And then right now, I don't know, because I'm kind of isolated, but I think that it depends on what sector you're in right now, but there maybe people are losing their jobs a lot. And they're also, though, in the city for residential work, people in other places, I think too, like residential work is going crazy. So like people are at home and they're like, I can't live like this. I have to renovate. And they are. Or they're building little things for them to, work at, like little out things in their yard to work in, to office in. And so you have to be prepared for that boom bust cycle and be stubborn and be curious about, well, this is changing. What can I do? If I want to stay in architecture, what can I do? And then if you decide you don't want to stay in architecture in one of those periods, then you get curious and say, maybe I should be an engineer, or it's a little more stable. What would it take for me to get, a graduate degree in engineering? But just keep your options open, but stay curious and stubborn if you want to stay with it.
Now that you mentioned like right now, like the time right now, how would you say that this pandemic has affected your career?
It's been fine for us. We just moved the office home and we kept working. We have contracts. They never went on hold, like nothing. We're in the work that Jordan, my husband, is in is considered essential. So it never stopped. And I know a lot of architects looking at just my Instagram pages, like they've just been working steadily all year. For us, it's been good. But I know that other firms, the firm that I used to work for, I think that they downsized a lot. So it just depends. It's this. One of the other things I would say besides the stubbornness is like to always look for the beauty in the situation, the silver lining, and work towards being part of that. Well, why did you think about architecture? What was the thing that you looked at a building and you thought, I wonder what it takes to do that? Or, your brother's an engineer and you're like, that would be boring. I'm going to be an architect. Don't tell him that you said that.
I always judge him for his career. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Since I was little, I've always been more in the creative side rather than stick with the books, I suppose.
Right.
And since I was little, I've always been like around the house, like designing little stuff or like redecorating and moving things around and telling my mom like, oh, this would be better if it was like that, or oh,
yeah,
this and that. Yes, I always been like very, like, I don't know, like I guess I've just always seen that in like buildings.
You see it. You have the eye. Yeah, and that like there are a lot of things like you draw, do photography, take different kinds of art classes. I took clay, like printmaking, and then with the computer, of course, you can just do, all of these things, but the real things, like where you're really making something, you can taste it, you just keep feeding that eye, because when you can see that, you see beauty And not everyone, like literally that's the thing with clients, like, they don't understand why you get it so bent out of shape. Like, this needs to move this much. And they're like, I don't care. And I'm like, but you will, like, you'll feel it. If this moves 1/2 of an inch, you will feel better in this space. Like, and they're like, I don't believe you. And you're like, you have to believe me, because that's the difference between it feeling constricted or not. It's that much. And you'll feel it, you'll see it. And then they forget about that conversation and in the end, and then they just say like, it feels so good. And you're like, yep, remember that 1/2 inch? And it's the eye. It's when you have that eye, it's hard to look at ugliness in the world, and then you're contributing in your way to the beauty in the world. And that's very valuable. I mean, that's a very valid reason, a very valuable reason to decide to choose to study something. And I think the part about money in the profession is an issue. And so I think it's important to value what you have, and to continue to value it, and know that you're bringing something, that you are cultivating something that you have to a higher and higher level as the years and decades go on. And that will, at some point, you will have an expertise that is valuable and worth compensating. And just hold on to that, because you'll hear a lot of people talk about, like, it's no money, all of this stuff. And that can be very true, but it can be true. You can make a good living. I think if you want to make a killing, there are other professions that are easier to do that. But if you have that eye and you can see things 3-dimensionally, like to a good degree, where you can just see things, it's hard to work in professions that are like law or money professions, like like investment banker, that kind of thing. So, and then if you decide, I would like to make more money than this, after undergraduate, you could go to get a law degree, and you could specialize in architecture related law. You could get an MBA, and you could be more of the managing partner in a firm, because you are running the business end of it. And these are all choices that are available if you would like to do them or would not like to do them, but they're all available. There's not just one path, like you're the iconic designer architect, because if you look at these people, many of them, they're not very happy people. That's the thing too, to decide, like, I value my happiness, I value my joy, and I'm gonna create a path that is my own. Do you follow any people on like Instagram or anything? Any
Yeah,
architects?
not really. Yes, but not really. I do follow like just some random architects I find, and some buildings that I like, and so I just go into them and look at them.
So I would recommend, just from talking to you, I would recommend to follow Antoine Predock, Predock. I can send it to you too in a text. Because he's old now. Like, I don't know how old, but he's old. But he posts all the time, and he's so generous, and he's teaching in New Mexico, so it's not far from you, because you're in El Paso, right? So I think he might be in Albuquerque. But he has a really great like community, and he posts on Facebook and on Instagram, and he's just always encouraging, and he has a really beautiful body of work that I think he's in his 70s now, and he's been practicing a long time. So that's who I recommend. And Yeah. And just, you know, get a good group, you know, of supportive people, because it's still a little bit, you know, it's still a bit rough, you know. And so as you're navigating it, just have, you know, have good people to bounce things off of, you know, in your community, you know. In like Manny's perfect for that, because he's the kind of person you would tell, like, you know, you don't have to sacrifice, you know, your dignity to work in this profession as a woman. So, and there's a lot of crap. So just know, like, that, you know, just hold your ground in a very dignified way that you feel good about. And I know it's hard for me to comprehend that, because you're like, what, 17?
Yes.
Yeah. And like all of this stuff should have been sorted out by now, and it's not. Don't be afraid to like walk out of a job. You know, if somebody gives you a hard time in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, don't be afraid. Just walk out, and you'll find the right thing will happen. Because there's just a lot of crap. And I think that's one of the things, if they have like a women in architecture, and it's sort of a thing of navigating it, like not navigating it like, you know, this is horrible, you know, but this sort of idea of just knowing, like, you can navigate a path, you can chart a course for yourself, and trust yourself, trust your intuition, and know, like, you know, you don't have to be treated badly by employers, contractors, or clients. So, you know, yeah. And yeah. And just own that. Just like from the very beginning, write it down as an intention. Like, you know, I will not be treated in a demeaning way, in any way that's truly demeaning to me. I will find people who support me and cultivate my talent, and cultivate my ability, because I have something to bring to this show. Like life.
Yes. Thank you so much for that advice. I got into this knowing that it was gonna be harder for me, um, given like my background and that I'm a female and all of this. And your advice, like, it really just like makes me realize that it is true, and it is sad, but we gotta keep going. And if it is what we like, then we gotta do it.
Right. And we have to keep going, and know that you'll keep going. Like, because there's a lot of points where I'm just like, oh, you know, but, you know, you just keep going, because that's what I think is like, well, what else do I want to do? Like, and that's the thing, for the last few years, you know, I've been doing like all this coaching online, and everybody wants to be a coach. And I'm like, I don't want to be a coach or an online person or an influencer. I just want to like do my stuff. Like, I'm going to find a way. And then something always shows up. Something always shows up. It always works out. And it's a myth when they say, like, you know, it's only this way. I think it is changing, and it's getting better. I think the curiosity part is very important, because I don't know what's going to happen to this profession with AI, with like robots who can build things. Like, and so there's this level of curiosity about like what's going to happen, and then where will people such as ourselves, where will we still be, where will our expertise still be required? So in the city, so we're living in the city, and I wanted to move to the city because you have to have architects here. Like, it's not like in other places where it's sort of a superfluous thing. Like, you have to build, to do anything, you have to have an architect for practically anything you build. So if you want to redo your apartment, you have to have an architect. You can't just start demoing the stuff because you live in a building where there are neighbors, and the neighbors see that you got a permit or not, and the permit requires an architect. So you can't just get away with stuff, you know, and so that it's nice to have that built-in requirement for the profession. So, you know, those are the, and then, so what happens? What happens with AI? What happens with all of these? Someone was saying there's a virtual, like the virtual reality. And they said, so if you stand on this corner and you put the goggles on and you look up, like you literally can see the whole building there. And so I said, well, at some point it's just going to be like, we're not even going to build it anymore. Everyone's just going to live in a warehouse. We're going to have those goggles on, like looking around, like that becomes the reality. And so then what do real architects building real buildings do? And sort of thinking about, you know, how can I be curious about what's happening in this whole world in a way, just navigate so that I can keep using my eye because that's what I'm good at.
Well, thank you so much for letting us have this interview, this meeting. It was great having you, and I appreciate that you were able to give me time to have this interview with you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It was my pleasure. And I wish you all the best and stay well. I hope everyone's getting the vaccine very soon and we come out of this, you know, mending our hearts for this very hard circumstances.